June 13, 1944. Normandy. When the first shell hit, German soldiers thought it was just another artillery barrage, but 10 minutes turned into 30, then hours, and that's when they realized something terrifying: the American guns were never going to stop. June 13, 1944. Outside Carentan, Normandy. The hedgerows shake before the sound arrives. Obergefreiter Karl Weiss, 352nd Infantry Division, has been awake for 36 hours. His helmet sits crooked, mud drying along the rim. He is crouched in a shallow foxhole carved into the Norman earth, rifle across his knees, listening to something he has never heard before, not in Poland, not in Russia, not even under British guns at Caen. At first, it sounds like distant thunder. Then the ground lurches. The first American shell lands 2 fields away. The impact doesn't scream, it punches. Dirt, stone, and roots blast into the air. Weiss presses his face into the soil just as a second shell hits. Then a third. Then a fourth. Within seconds, the horizon disappears behind columns of smoke. Someone is shouting. Weiss doesn't know who. It might be him. The barrage thickens, overlapping explosions until there is no pause between them. The earth vibrates like a struck drum. Each detonation slams through Weiss's chest, rattling his teeth, compressing his lungs. He has survived artillery before. Soviet guns fired in waves, British guns fired in patterns. This is different. This does not stop. By the 10th minute, Weiss realizes something is wrong. American artillery is not firing a preparation barrage. They are not softening a target before an assault. They are maintaining fire, adjusting, correcting, walking shells forward with machine precision. Shells begin landing closer. 50 meters. Then 30. The radio crackles behind him. The battery commander is screaming into the handset, demanding counter-battery fire. The reply comes back broken, almost apologetic. Kein Munition. Keine Verbindung. No ammunition. No connection. Another shell detonates directly on the trench to Weiss's left. The men who were there vanish, not bodies, just absence. A crater where living soldiers had been seconds before. Weiss curls inward, helmet scraping dirt, as the world becomes sound and pressure. This is June 1944. The Allies have been in Normandy for just over a week. German intelligence believed the Americans were inexperienced soft troops backed by noise and propaganda. What Weiss is experiencing now will shatter that belief forever. Because the shells do not stop after 15 minutes. They do not stop after 30. An hour passes. Then another. Somewhere far behind the hedgerows, American artillery crews are working with mechanical calm. 105 mm M2A1 howitzers recoil and reset. 155 mm long toms send shells screaming miles downrange. Crews move in practiced rhythms: load, fire, adjust, repeat. Fire direction centers crunch numbers, triangulating German positions using forward observers perched in church towers, trees, and half-destroyed farmhouses. Radios hum constantly. This is not chaos. This is orchestration. Every request for fire is answered. On Weiss's front, the psychological damage is immediate. Men begin screaming that the Americans have unlimited ammunition. Others shout that new batteries must be arriving every hour. A lieutenant tries to stand. To restore order, a shell lands nearby and throws him backward, motionless. By mid-morning, Weiss's company has ceased to function as a unit. Survivors exist as individuals, clinging to holes in the earth, praying for silence that never comes. The American infantry does not attack yet. They wait. The shells continue. Weiss's watch stops working. He no longer knows the time. His mouth tastes of chalk and blood. Every muscle in his body is clenched, locked against the next impact. And still the guns do not fall silent. In later years, German veterans will struggle to explain this moment. They will say it felt like fighting an enemy with no rear, no limit, no fatigue. They will call it ein endloser Stahlregen. An endless rain of steel. But in June 1944, Karl Weiss has no words for it. Only one thought repeats in his mind, louder than the explosions. They can do this forever. And somewhere beyond the hedgerows, American guns continue to fire, not hurried, not desperate but methodical, relentless, precise. The storm has only begun. June 13, 1944. 3 miles west of Carrington. Captain James L. Harrington, 29th Infantry Division Artillery Liaison, wipes sweat from his eyes and leans over a folding map table set up inside a shattered barn. Dust hangs in the air, shaken loose by the constant concussion of outgoing fire. The barn's walls are scarred with shrapnel, but the roof still stands for now. Harrington listens to his headset. Adjust fire. Drop 50. Battery 2, fire for effect. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. Outside, 6 105mm howitzers recoil in sequence. The gun crews move like factory workers. One man rams the shell, another slams the breech, a third yanks the lanyard. The guns bark, recoil, reset. Again. 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 They have been firing since dawn. Behind the battery, trucks arrive in a steady stream. GMCCCKW deuce and a half cargo trucks grind to a halt, tailgates dropping as ammunition crates are slid onto the ground. No shouting. No panic. Just checklists and muscle memory. This is what the German soldiers under fire cannot see. They cannot see the supply columns stretching back to the beaches. They cannot see the depots stacked with shells, the railheads already functioning on captured French lines, the engineers repairing roads faster than German reconnaissance can map them. They cannot see that this artillery barrage is not a strain on American resources. It is routine. Harrington checks his watch. Another fire mission comes in. Infantry pinned by a German machine gun nest hidden along a sunken lane. Grid reference confirmed, he says. 1 gun. 2 rounds. High explosive. 30 seconds later, the position disappears in a cloud of dirt and smoke. This speed is what shocks German survivors later. Not just the volume but the responsiveness. In the German army, artillery requests often require layers of approval, coordination between units competing for scarce ammunition. By 1944, shortages are everywhere. Guns are present, but shells are rationed. Radios fail. Lines are cut. Fire missions are delayed or denied. The American system is different. Every infantry battalion has trained forward observers. Every observer has a radio. Every artillery unit is linked into a fire direction center that can shift dozens of guns onto a single target within minutes. If one battery is busy, another answers. If one gun overheats, another takes its place. By early afternoon, German attempts at counter-battery fire fail completely. Their shells fall wide, sporadic, a few desperate replies swallowed by the American barrage. Spotting aircraft orbit overhead, calmly adjusting coordinates. On the German side, confusion spreads. Messages from the front report something impossible. The Americans are firing without pause, without the normal lulls that signal ammunition exhaustion or unit rotation. A regimental staff officer scribbles notes furiously, trying to calculate how long such fire can be sustained. His math makes no sense. Even conservative estimates suggest the Americans are firing thousands of rounds per hour, far beyond what German logistics can imagine supplying to a single sector. By evening, the effect on German morale becomes visible. Men refuse to move between positions. Runners hug shell holes rather than cross open ground. Officers lose control not because their soldiers are cowards but because movement itself has become suicidal. Every attempt to reorganize draws immediate fire. At 1940, a German counterattack is ordered anyway. Desperation outweighs fear. The first squad emerges from cover. American artillery adjusts instantly. The shells land with brutal accuracy, walking forward in perfect intervals. The counterattack dissolves before it fully forms. Back at the American Fire Direction Center, Harrington listens to the reports without emotion. He has learned not to celebrate. Artillerymen measure success in silence, in the absence of incoming enemy fire, in the steady advance of friendly lines. He flips a page on his clipboard. Another mission complete. Behind him, a sergeant calls out ammunition counts. The numbers are still high. Very high. The guns will fire through the night. They always do. And far across the hedgerows, Obergefreiter Karl Weiss realizes something else, something even more terrifying than the shells themselves. The Americans are not improvising. This is not a surge. This is doctrine. This is how they fight. And if this is only the beginning, if this is what American artillery looks like on a quiet Norman afternoon, then what awaits them deeper inland is almost unthinkable. As darkness settles over Normandy, the guns continue to thunder. Not in rage. Not in desperation. But with the cold confidence of an army that knows it has time, ammunition, and the means to keep firing for as long as it takes. Night of June 13 to 14, 1944. German forward positions near the Weir River. Darkness usually brings relief. For soldiers on every front of the war, night means fewer aircraft, fewer observers, fewer shells. It is when men move, regroup, evacuate wounded, and whisper plans for survival. Tonight, there is no relief. Obergefreiter Karl Weiss lifts his head cautiously as the light fades from the sky. His ears ring constantly now, a high metallic whine layered over the deeper thunder of distant guns. He waits for the familiar moment, the pause, the slowing, the silence that usually follows sunset. It never comes. Instead, the artillery changes character. The explosions become sharper, more deliberate. Single shells land with surgical precision, then pairs, then sudden clusters. Flares burst overhead, bathing the hedgerows in ghostly white light. Shadows jump. Men freeze. The Americans can still see. Forward observers equipped with radios and binoculars remain in position, relaying coordinates with calm efficiency. Sound ranging and flash spotting replace daylight observation. The system adapts, seamlessly. Weiss realizes with growing dread that the enemy's guns do not depend on the sun. A runner stumbles into the position, face gray with dust. Orders from battalion, he gasps. We are to withdraw 50 meters. Quietly. Quietly. The word feels absurd. The first man climbs out of the trench. A shell detonates 20 meters away. The withdrawal collapses instantly. Men dive back into cover, some screaming, some silent. The wounded moan, unheard beneath the bombardment. Stretchers are useless, movement draws death. By midnight, German positions have effectively fossilized. Units exist on maps, but not in motion. Commanders cannot maneuver, cannot probe, cannot counterattack. The battlefield belongs entirely to the guns. Several kilometers away, inside a dug-in command post, Major Heinrich Vogel, artillery officer for the German 91st Air Landing Division, studies incoming reports. His hands shake slightly as he lights a cigarette. He has fought in Russia. He has endured Soviet barrages that lasted hours. But even there, ammunition shortages forced pauses. Here, there are none. Vogel calculates again. He has already recalculated twice. American artillery batteries should have exhausted their ammunition by now. Unless. The realization hits him slowly, then all at once. Unless they are being resupplied continuously. He imagines the logistics required. Hundreds of trucks. Roads secured against air attack. Fuel without rationing. Ammunition depots untouched by bombing. The implication is devastating. This is not just firepower. It is industrial warfare, executed flawlessly at the front line. At 2 o'clock, Vogel sends a report up the chain of command, his language carefully restrained but unmistakably urgent. Enemy artillery fire sustained at high volume for over 16 hours. No observable reduction. Morale severely affected. Countermeasures ineffective. He does not write what he is thinking. That if this continues, the division will cease to exist as a fighting force not through annihilation, but paralysis. Back in the trenches, Weiss has lost all sense of time. His canteen is empty. His hands are numb. He presses his fingers into the earth, feeling the vibrations ripple through the soil before each impact. The ground itself has become a warning system. A nearby machine gun opens fire, suddenly a reflexive response to a shadow, a sound, a hallucination. Within seconds, shells obliterate the position. The lesson is immediate and brutal. Do nothing. Say nothing. Become part of the ground. Around 4:30, rain begins to fall. Mud mixes with blood and chalky dust. The bombardment continues, rain or not. The shells punch through wet earth just as easily. Weiss thinks of home not nostalgically, but practically. He wonders if the Americans are firing shells made in cities that have never seen war. If the men loading them slept in real beds the night before. At dawn, the sky lightens again. The guns do not slow. Instead, they intensify. The new day brings fresh observers, rested crews, and renewed coordination. The barrage tightens, creeping forward with unmistakable intent. This is not harassment fire. This is preparation for something worse. As the first American infantry squads begin moving under the protective curtain of artillery, Weiss finally understands the true purpose of the endless bombardment. It was never meant only to kill. It was meant to break time itself, to erase the distinction between day and night, between attack and pause, between survival and exhaustion. By the morning of June 14, German resistance near Ardennes is no longer organized defense. It is endurance. And endurance, Weiss now knows, favors the side whose guns never sleep. December 22, 1944. Near Bastogne, Belgium. 6 months later, winter replaces hedgerows with forest. Gefreiter Otto Kruger, 26th Volksgrenadier Division, pulls his greatcoat tighter as snow drifts into the shallow slit trench. His breath fogs the air. Pine branches creak overhead under the weight of ice. Somewhere ahead, American lines sit hidden among the trees. This offensive was supposed to be different. Operation Wacht am Rhein. The Ardennes offensive was meant to shock the Allies, split their lines, and buy Germany time. Kruger was told the Americans were green troops, overextended, vulnerable to surprise. For the first 2 days, it almost seemed true. Then the guns spoke. At 6:30, American artillery erupts without warning. The shells cut through the frozen air with a sound Kruger will later describe as tearing metal. Trees explode into splinters. Air bursts shower steel fragments in all directions. Men dive for cover, only to discover the ground is frozen solid. There is nowhere to go. The barrage does not sweep and lift like German fire. It hovers, saturating suspected assembly areas, road junctions, and forest clearings with merciless accuracy. Shells detonate in the treetops, turning branches into shrapnel. Kruger curls into himself, pressing his helmet down as splinters slice through coats and flesh alike. Nearby, a non-commissioned officer screams for movement. No one moves. The Americans have brought their artillery into the snow. What the German planners did not anticipate was how quickly the American system would recover. Even surrounded units like the 101st Airborne Division at Bastogne retain radio contact with artillery support outside the encirclement. Forward observers operate from cellars, church steeples, even foxholes. When visibility fails, pre-registered fire missions take over. Coordinates already mapped, already rehearsed. When German armor attempts to push through forest roads, American artillery converges instantly. Time-on-target missions bring shells from multiple batteries down simultaneously, creating the illusion of a single colossal gun. At German headquarters, reports accumulate with grim familiarity. Enemy artillery extremely heavy. Continuous. Accurate. By December 24, the weather clears. German commanders hope American air power will be the real threat. They are wrong. The artillery remains the constant. Supply shortages plague the German advance. Shells are rationed. Guns fall silent not by choice, but necessity. Horses collapse in the snow, hauling what little ammunition remains. The Americans, by contrast, fire as if winter does not exist. Behind the lines, heated tents shelter gun crews. Trucks run day and night. Ammunition dumps, stocked months earlier, now pay dividends. Engineers keep roads open despite snow and ice. To the German infantryman, it feels supernatural. Kruger watches an entire platoon attempt to cross a clearing under cover of fog. The Americans cannot see them, but the artillery does not need to. Prepland fires slam into the clearing at precisely the moment the Germans reach the halfway point. No survivors emerge. By Christmas Eve, Kruger's unit has ceased advancing. Orders change hourly. Morale disintegrates not from fear of death, but from the certainty of futility. Every movement is answered. Every concentration is punished. On December 26, the encirclement of Bastogne is broken. American artillery, now fully coordinated with air and armor, hammers German withdrawal routes relentlessly. Kruger stumbles westward with the remnants of his company, ears ringing, hands trembling uncontrollably. In Normandy, German soldiers had called it an endless rain of steel. In the Ardennes, they give it a new name. Der nie-endende Sturm. The never-ending storm. This time, there is no illusion of recovery. No hope that the Americans will tire. The artillery has proven something fundamental, that American power is not tied to terrain, weather, or surprise. It is systemic. And systems, once set in motion, do not get exhausted. As German units begin retreating toward the Rhine, one truth settles heavily over every surviving soldier. They are no longer fighting an army. They are fighting a machine vast, coordinated, and inexhaustible. And its guns are still firing. March 7, 1945. East bank of the Rhine, near Remagen. The river is gray and swollen, carrying debris downstream, broken timbers, abandoned equipment, pieces of a collapsing front. Obergefreiter Karl Weiss stands among a column of exhausted men watching American forces fan out across the far bank. He no longer wears unit insignia. Many do not. The war has stripped them of identity as thoroughly as it has stripped them of hope. Behind him, someone mutters that the Americans crossed the Rhine on an intact bridge. Weiss barely reacts. What finally broke him did not happen at the river. It happened weeks earlier, in a nameless village west of Cologne, when American artillery fired for 3 consecutive days without pause. No attack followed at first. Just fire. Shells methodically erased buildings, intersections, tree lines. The bombardment adjusted continuously, as if the Americans could see through walls, through smoke, through exhaustion itself. Weiss remembers sitting in a cellar, counting impacts until he lost count. Remembering thinking that even if he survived the next minute, the next hour, the next day, there was no scenario in which this ended differently. By February 1945, German artillery officers had stopped asking when American fire would lift. They asked if it ever would. Captured German reports from this period repeat the same phrases again and again: enemy artillery fire overwhelming, continuous, morale shattered. Some officers are more honest. One regimental commander writes that American artillery has made maneuver warfare impossible. Another admits that infantry units collapse before seeing a single American soldier. The realization spreads quietly but completely. This is not about bravery. This is not about tactics. This is about capacity. American artillery represents something Germany no longer possesses: time, material, coordination, and an economy untouched by invasion. Every shell that lands represents not just a gun crew, but a factory, a rail network, a fuel depot, a training doctrine perfected over years. German soldiers feel it instinctively. They know that even if they hold today, tomorrow will bring the same storm, and the next day, and the next. There is no wearing this enemy down. In early March, Weiss is captured near the Ruhr pocket. The firefight is brief. He emerges from cover with his hands raised, not because he is surrounded, but because the artillery has begun to adjust again. The choice feels logical. At the POW collection point, Weiss sits on the ground, wrapped in a borrowed blanket. Nearby, American artillery fires continue in the distance, not at him now, but at targets still resisting. He listens carefully. The cadence is familiar. Measured. Unhurried. Endless. An American guard offers him a cigarette. Weiss takes it with shaking hands. For the first time in months, there is no shell landing close enough to throw him into the dirt. Later, in captivity, Weiss will speak with other German veterans. Tankers. Paratroopers. Artillerymen. All of them mention the same thing. Not the bombs. Not the tanks. The guns. They talk about how American artillery followed them everywhere through hedgerows, forests, snowstorms, cities. How it never seemed to weaken, never seemed to ration itself, never seemed to run out. They describe it not as a weapon, but as an environment. Like weather. Like gravity. Historians will later quantify it: millions of shells fired, fire missions answered in minutes, coordination unmatched by any army before or since. But numbers fail to capture what it felt like to live beneath it. What it meant to realize, day after day, that the enemy could always do this again tomorrow. For Karl Weiss, the war ends not with surrender papers or victory parades, but with a quiet understanding formed somewhere between Normandy and the Rhine. That the moment American artillery opened fire and never stopped, the outcome was already decided. The storm did not win the war alone. But it made everything else inevitable. And long after the guns finally fall silent, those who survived will remember the sound not as explosions, but as certainty. For the men on the receiving end, it wasn't just firepower, it was certainty. The certainty that no matter how long they held on, the guns would keep coming. And once American artillery opened fire, the outcome of the war was only a matter of time. If this story gave you a new perspective on World War II, hit like to support the channel, comment below with what moment shocked you the most, and subscribe for more cinematic, historically accurate World War II documentaries.